And Christmas is one of those things which I believe should be considered. Whether you're religious or not, many people hold celebrations around this time. Many people are going on holiday or taking breaks from work, and there's a lot of celebration going on. Hey folks, and welcome back to the JLX Friends and Benefits podcast, and a massive warm welcome to anyone watching this on YouTube. So as you can see, what we've decided to do is actually split the podcast into both its audio and its video, with the aim to basically help out people who maybe don't like listening to podcasts so much and would prefer to sit down and maybe watch a YouTube video, maybe get more out of it if they can kind of watch the video as opposed to just listening. I know that for me, I really like watching YouTube videos, and so I thought, hey, why not kind of take on two birds with one stone and both supply the podcast, as I always have, but also start diving into YouTube a bit more as well. So with today's podcast episode, what I wanted to go through with you is the run up to Christmas. Now, what you will see is everyone and their aunt are going through the 101 things that you should do on the way to Christmas. You've only got 3 months, you've only got this, you should be doing this, oh look what you can do in this amount of time. I'm sure you've heard or seen a lot about this so far. So what I wanted to talk to you about really was the considerations. So obviously with our clients at the moment, what we have is people thinking, should I diet? Maybe they're gaining at the moment and we have to try and plan in mini cuts and so on. And Christmas is one of those things which I believe should be considered. Whether you're religious or not, many people hold celebrations around this time. Many people are going on holiday or taking breaks from work, and there's a lot of celebration going on. What I think is not a good idea is for people who want to be more, say, hardcore in this period of time and try and diet through Christmas. Oh, it's just one day, I'll get around it. The truth is, in my opinion, what you're doing is setting yourself up to fail there more often than not. And I've said this to a lot of my clients so far. Why not just maintain for that week? Why not look to maintain, take the pressure off yourself, and be able to actually, I don't mean enjoy by going all out with food, but actually be more relaxed with your approach and therefore enjoy yourself some more as well. So let's take, for example, a mini cut. A lot of our clients are gaining at the moment. We've got some super strong women on our team and doing a marvellous job with this. And for them, some of them are coming up to that point now where we're thinking, right, we might need to get a mini cut in. Where would we do that? Well, we're certainly not going to do that between Christmas and New Year. And we're also not going to do that the week before Christmas, because the one thing we don't want to do is get people super, super hungry just before they're going to go into Christmas. Because of course, if you're super, super hungry and you have a lot of food focus, then the thing we're going to end up doing is potentially creating what should we call it? A not so pleasant situation when it comes to the Christmas Day meal and nobody else has any food and you've got it all. So effectively, look, we're looking at a 5-6 week mini cut here. So as I said, we're not going to start that between Christmas and New Year. We're not going to start it before. And ideally, we're not going to end it on, a couple of days before Christmas. What I would prefer to do is end it a week before, which gives us a few more days back at maintenance or even gaining before all of the celebrations really do start to kick off. Now, people's goals and things like that are going to be very much conflicting with this at times. People are going to say, well, hang on a minute, what about this or what about that? But from my perspective, what we don't want to be doing is looking for an extra 1% body weight loss or 2% body weight loss for the potential for that all to be gained back, because what we did was not necessarily a sensible decision based, of course, on the festivities and work dues and so on. So what I recommend doing is working ourselves back from the end point to where we want to be finishing that mini cut. So if we're going to be mini cutting for say 6 weeks, what I would say is, look, let's finish by like the 20th of December, right? Let's give us a few days at least before that. So what I would do is find the kind of Friday, Saturday around that time. I think it actually is like the 18th or 19th off the top of my head. And I would say, right, let's finish there at the latest. And then I would reverse engineer it back, which probably means you're going to be starting your mini cut about mid-November if you need to do one. And with that, obviously, you will obviously be kind of dieting through a phase where lots of people are going out, lots of festivities and things. A little bit like this summer has been for a lot of us, because of course, obviously being in lockdowns and so on, everyone's been kind of enjoying the more social side of life, and rightly so, over the last few weeks, which is, absolutely fantastic. And it's been really, really nice to see. So as I was saying, we're going to need to start that probably around mid-November. And of course, there are considerations around kind of Christmas parties for work. We've got, I don't know if you guys go to things like Christmas festivals or even kind of the markets and things like that. They always do wicked crepes. I love a crepe. Yeah, let me know if you like a crepe. My personal favourite crepe is Nutella, obviously, and strawberries and banana. Or no strawberries and just banana, but I quite like them both. Let me know if you're a fan of crepes. But yeah. So effectively, you've got these things to negotiate as well. I'm not saying we have to avoid them, I'm just saying we have to negotiate them because there will be challenges that likely do come up in this space of time. Now, the reason I do this and the reason I focus on this so much is because I've seen so many people attempt to go through things like, festivities like Christmas and so on, where they're like, yeah, I'm just going to diet through it. And not only do they not succeed in continuing to lose weight, but they actually do their relationship with food a real disservice. And for a lot of our team and a lot of our clients, they're things that people have worked so hard on over the years, and it's the last thing we would ever want to see go downhill. But not only that, their relationship with people, because people don't often understand why you're doing what you're doing. If you're listening to this podcast, you're clearly into fitness, and you will most likely have received some form of, "Ooh, why are you doing that?" Or, "Oh, why don't you eat some more?" Or, one of those annoying comments that people tend to throw at you because they think they're being helpful. I'm digressing with a rant, here we go. But effectively, what I think is most important here is that we look at the bigger picture. It's 1 week, okay? So unless you're competing in competitive bodybuilding or so on, then yeah, that week may be very, very important for you. I totally understand. But for the majority of our clients, it's really not. And so what I'm saying to most people is, hey, it's 1 week. If we're so concerned, and I've said this for years, probably ever since I started PTing, if we're so concerned about that 1 week, about dieting through that week or anything like that, what are we doing for the other 51 weeks in the year that means that 1 week is so pressurized? Are we just eating like whatever we fancy all year and then going, oh, I have to diet in this 1 week? I'm not saying you don't issue some restraint, and I'm not saying that there won't be some moments where you're kind of thinking, oh, probably ate a bit much there, and you maybe feel uncomfortable. But in those situations, one of the things I like to try and encourage people to do is really see their inner child with this thing. Being a child was amazing, right? Your relationship with food as a child most likely was very good. And it would be like, you'd go and eat sweets until you almost felt sick. And then the next day you'd get up and you'd eat breakfast and you wouldn't think anything of it. There wouldn't even be a slight kind of, oh, probably won't eat breakfast, I ate too much last night. And that was such a nice and innocent place to be. And obviously as you get older, you learn these things, and, our kind of relationship with food a lot of the time becomes distorted by social media, the news and that kind of thing, media in general, but also people's opinions and what people have said to us. So in that week, it's obviously quite pressured for some people. It's obviously one of those weeks where people really do try to let go and they do try to enjoy themselves some more, but it's not always the case. So when we bring all of these things back and we put them all together, what I think we have is a time of year which has the potential for us to have a really, really good time, and has the potential for us to, spend quality time with loved ones, enjoy some more food, enjoy some different types of food, maybe enjoy a few drinks if you like drinking. But we sometimes put so much pressure on ourselves, and that can be an issue. That can be something which I believe is counterintuitive to the whole reason we're all doing this, the whole reason we're all on this journey, and that's to make ourselves feel a bit better, maybe a bit fitter, but most of all, enjoy ourselves while we're doing it, right? So, that's kind of my thoughts on anybody who's thinking about running a mini cut anytime soon. Make sure you plan ahead. I would definitely say that's a super important thing to be considering, and a really important thing to be doing as well. The next thing I want to talk about is dieting. Now, not everyone diets in January, okay? Believe it or not, you can diet any other month of the year. Of course, what we do see is a huge tendency for people to diet in January. Now, what I would say is, if you're someone, and I have a couple of clients at the moment who are on what I call longer term diets, so not a mini cut, we're talking about 12 to 18 week diets. What I've been saying to them is, look, what we need to do is to facilitate our processes around these events. There is no point trying to drive our ship through the iceberg and hope for the best, okay? Because we all know what happened to the Titanic, and it wasn't good. When we're then planning, so one of the plans I've written this week actually which is a good example. What I've done is, usually we run 6-week blocks. So we do 5 weeks of training, 1 week of deload. And what I've done is I've just tampered with that slightly, so extended the 2 blocks a little bit, which gives us slightly longer. So I think it's actually 14 weeks. But it means we deload between Christmas and New Year, which means we'll have more calories during that week naturally, because of course when we deload we go back to maintenance. If you don't know about that, check out one of my earlier podcasts, I talk all about it. And of course we have less pressure, I would say, is probably not the right word, but we have obviously our deload sessions in that week, so less time in the gym, less concern, and obviously we can combine sessions, which takes out a huge amount of pressure there as well. So what we're doing is we are planning to win. We are putting ourselves in the best possible position to win. And that is every bit my ambition with every single client that I have. It's not about, hey, let's perfect this, let's be perfect, let's do these as we should do because the literature suggests it. It's, hey, the literature suggests this, but actually we have to navigate X, Y, and Z. So let's consider those things whilst we use the literature, whilst we use that to guide us in our best interests. So the important thing is, and actually it feeds back in wonderfully to our famous saying, backed by science, proven in practice. We'll use that science as best we can, and then we'll use the practice that we have used, over the few years that we've been coaching, many years actually, more than few, to really perfect that and to help you, to guide you through these really enjoyable times and to get the most out of them. Many people would see these as difficult times because, of course, relationships with food, with family and things like that can often become quite flared at this point, and can become definitely something which is to take away from the enjoyment actually. But from my perspective, it's something that we owe ourselves to work on. We owe ourselves to be able to develop, to grow, and to challenge ourselves in those difficult times, to start to see them as really positive times. Whether you see that this year or next year or the year after, that continued progression, that continued effort towards something that we find challenging is what I believe to be the kind of biggest win. And it's something which, as I said, might take 1 year, might take 2, or might take 5, but the continued effort towards moving forward really is what's important. At least to me, and it's how I try and coach my clients as well, to say, it's not what you do today, it's what we do tomorrow based on what we do today. So the same thing goes most commonly for protein targets. People, oh my God, I only hit 100 grams of protein this week, I've done terrible. Okay, fine, don't worry about that. What are we gonna do next week? Are we gonna hit 105 next week? Let's try that. Because if you add 5 grams a week and you do that for 10 weeks, you'll be doing 150 grams in no time. The same thing goes for fat loss. If you're concerned that you've only lost 2 pounds in 1 week because Bridget down the road has lost 12, ask yourself this question: what happens when I do this for 10 weeks straight? You've just lost 20 pounds, and ask your mate Bridget where she's at in 20 weeks time or 10 weeks time. Chances are the diet wasn't sustainable and she's gained 14 pounds, so she's actually 2 pounds up from where she started. It's a really unfortunate truth, but it's absolutely true. So hopefully what you've got from this conversation we've been having so far is the importance of actually setting ourselves up to win and not setting ourselves up for failure or potential failure by being over ambitious with our goals and not being realistic with the time frames or the seasons of which we're trying to do these things. And I think what's really important is that you ask yourself honestly, if you're thinking now, I'm probably still going to do that, why? What do you get out of it? What's the potential win that you can see for yourself in doing that? To me, I personally don't see it. I don't see what can be gained in that 1 week that you couldn't gain the week after or the week after that or even the week after that. But I can see many things that could be potentially lost in that time. So as I was saying, reverse engineer things, plan things slightly differently if you have to, but start thinking ahead now. So don't get to kind of December 23rd and think, shit, I got my hardest week of training this week, I'm still dieting, and then wonder what it is you really should be doing. From my perspective, what we should have done is planned it now. So while everyone is saying to you now, you've got X amount of time left for this year, you could achieve so much. Yeah, cool, nice advertising, but at the end of the day, what I'd be saying to you is, what are you going to do with a plan that means you're going to win the rest of the year? Not, lose 30 pounds in the next 3 months or any of that bullshit. What I'd be concerned with is, how am I going to manage the next couple of months to make sure that I'm optimizing my training optimizing my nutrition. And of course, I have set myself up well around the Christmas and the festivities, again, whether you celebrate Christmas or not, maybe you have other festivities at that point, to actually mean I get the most out of this. Because fundamentally, what will go beyond that week isn't necessarily the 3 or 4 pounds of weight you may gain, because maybe you just go a little bit too far on the food or drink, but the relationship with food. If you've got a really strong relationship with food through that time, regardless of body weight, that's something that will stick with you for the rest of the year and longer. It's far easier to lose weight than it is to change your relationship with food. And I think anybody who has a bad relationship or has struggled with that in the past will agree with me. And so always work hard to protect that. Always do what you can to look after yourself in that regard, because the physical sides of fat loss are simple. The structure of it is simple. The method of it is simple. The execution of it is difficult. I'm not going to debate that. I'm not going to lie that. But what is the most difficult thing is once you've got yourself in the kind of grips of an eating disorder or disordered eating kind of habits and things like that, it's really difficult to get out of that. So always ask yourself, what's in my best interests? Not maybe right now, but in a couple of weeks' time, 4 weeks' time, 5 weeks' time, or in a few months' time. And that's a really, really important lesson I think is valuable to remember. Now I've got a couple of questions here. From a question box actually I put up a few weeks ago, and I said, hey, I'm going to do a podcast on the best couple of questions. And actually what I'm thinking I'm going to do nowadays, and again I'd love some feedback on this, is I'm going to do some kind of knowledge, some planning, and something in the front part of the podcast where I'm going to talk through some things maybe my clients and I have chatted through, or something I think may be helpful, and then I'm going to answer a couple of questions for you guys off the back of this in the second half. So, you know, if you follow me on Instagram, get your questions in, because I'll often pick a couple and think, oh, that's a great question, I'll answer that one. And likewise, if you don't follow me on Instagram, go give me a follow. It's Xander_JLX, and often on a Friday I will do a question box, and the top 3 tend to get podcasted. Terrible use of English. But yeah, certainly that is what I plan to do. So let's kick off. So question number 1, and this is a question that's really, really common, and this question is, how do you know with your clients when you decide to diet or when you decide to gain them? And I'm guessing that this person has asked this question based on the fact that they're asking for themselves. So what I always look to do is say, where do you want to be in 6 months' time? Okay, where do you want to be then? And if they say to me, I'm going on holiday in 6 months' time, and they already are saying they feel slightly uncomfortable in their physique, the chances are I'm not going to be saying, let's gain for 6 months. I might say, hey, look, your goals are to do these 4 things. You want bigger glutes, you want to lose a bit of fat, and you want to do a pull-up, right? All goals I help many people do on a really regular basis. What I would recommend we do is take a look at the physique first. Okay, let's have a look. Where you want to be and where you are now. Well, I would say actually what we could do is we could start off with a nice dieting phase. And then what we can do then is get you to a place where you feel comfortable, get there early, and then maintain. So take, for example, you diet for 18 weeks and your holiday is in 24. That gives us 6 weeks to get back to maintenance, you know, train nice and hard, get some good recovery, make sure you're not hungry before you go on holiday, and, you know, as I said, make sure you are back to what I would say kind of normal levels before your diet. Now, if you do that, you'll be super lean, depending on what your starting point is. Now, for some people, they might not need that long. So you might say, okay, what we'll do is we'll do a 12-week diet, and then we'll have 12 weeks at maintenance, because it's unlikely someone would want to gain into their holiday. Gaining into a holiday is something I've done with some clients before, especially ones who have got very lean. And obviously then having more calories means the muscles fill up and you start to feel much more toned. I don't like the word, but everyone knows what I mean. You know, your musculature starts to look far more impressive, your muscles feel much tighter, and you start to feel really quite badass, right? And so that is something I have done, but it really doesn't suit everyone, especially because going from dieting to gaining can be a struggle mentally. So this is how I kind of structure those things, but normally what I'd say is it depends on the original physique. If you're a male and you have ab separation, like clear ab separation, the chances are you probably don't need to diet first and you can go straight into gaining. If you are female, you might not have clear ab separation because obviously your levels of body fat tend to be much higher. and for good reason, for health purposes. So we would look at other things. Okay, do you have potentially, for some of you, if this will be kind of defined abs, but other things like that, you know, we're looking actually, are we below the level of normal lean for females? And you can normally see that very clearly in photos. And for example, if say we're above that, then we would diet. I would say for most people who join our team, for most people who actually ask this question, it's usually, hey, let's diet first. If it's 6, 12 or 18 weeks, normally it's just a quick one. Hey, let's just trim off a bit of the fat before we really drop the hammer on gaining. The reason I say that, and this is a really important one, is if people are already feeling slightly uncomfortable with their physique, then throwing them straight into a gaining phase, no matter how hard you work on their mentality towards that, is never going to be, in my opinion, the right option. What we would want to do is say, okay, look, let's work on your mentality towards this and loving your body and feeling good in your skin and all of this, you know, really positive and wonderful things, while we diet you down and prepare you for it. So after the first 6 weeks, we go, right, time to gain now. They A, feel a bit leaner and feel a bit lighter and feel a bit more comfortable. And B, now we've just bought ourselves potentially 12 more weeks of gaining, because it takes us double the length of time, if we follow scientific recommendations, to gain weight than it does to lose it. So not only have we bought ourselves an extra 12 weeks thanks to the work that we've done, we may have bought ourselves an extra 18 weeks purely thanks to the fact that we have worked on our mentality, we've worked on our relationship with ourselves and our physique and how we feel about that, and maybe our relationship with actually the scales and kind of how we perceive ourselves. So when we start to gain, it's a far more comfortable process. Obviously, every different person is different, and it's a really complex question to kind of answer like this, but these are my thought processes, which I hope you can kind of look into and go, oh, I can see why he thinks like that. And if you think, why on earth has he got that thought process? Ask me. I'd love to talk to you about it. I find these conversations fascinating because you get to see other people's perspectives, and actually you get to start to see things from other people's points of view. And I think as a coach, that's really, really beneficial to be able to do, because first and foremost, if you can't see things from other people's perspectives, then you're always going to be a kind of totalitarian coach. Do this because I say so, not, I wonder what they would think if I give them that. And, you know, often I say to my clients, my coaching brain, the part of me that's like science is saying we should do this, but my kind of human brain, the guy that wants to be, you know, logical about this, is saying this is a terrible idea. So these are the two things I'm thinking. How do you feel about this? And I really involve them in that process. So they have an input, they have a decision-making process. So they have to understand the pros and cons, similar to how I do as a coach. And then when they make their input, when they make their decision, they are a part of this. And that's a really important thing to have as well. Okay, we're gonna do one more question. Let's have a look. Okay, this is a good one. How do you change your programming based on quads versus hamstrings versus glutes? Now, this is a complex question purely in the way that I'm going to answer it. Obviously, there's no backstory as far as I can see to this. So what I would say is that for some really, really advanced people, what you might do is try and prioritize kind of, right, we can do glutes and quads, or glutes and hamstrings, although the problem with glutes and hamstrings is that some of the movements cross over. So if you've got super sore glutes and you've got to do good mornings, it's kind of a pain in the ass. Hey, pardon the pun. I actually didn't mean to do that. And now I'm laughing at myself. Brilliant. But now I've lost my train of thought. Quads and glutes, or hams and quads, tend to go together well. Okay, so if I was to specialize, I would say, right, we can either focus on glutes and your quads, or your quads and your hamstrings, because naturally they don't cross over so much. If you've got a sore pair of quads, you can still work your glutes pretty well. If you've got a sore pair of glutes, you can still work your quads pretty well. And likewise then, if you've got a sore pair of hamstrings, doing things like 45-degree hypers, RDLs, things like that we might use to grow the glutes, are going to be off the cards at that point, because they're going to be so sore that going through those movement patterns will disrupt our kind of perception of RIR, and obviously training to failure and things like that. So it may affect progression going forward. Now, for most people, I would say it's not a consideration. I'd say it's not something that you need to be concerned about. It's not something you need to worry about, because you are not going to be advanced enough yet to worry about putting all your eggs in one basket of either muscle. For most people who we coach, beginners and intermediate, some of our more advanced people even, just throw the kitchen sink at all of the muscles. So we can say, right, we know that the minimal effective dose, so the minimum effective volume amount needed for the hamstrings to grow is a lot less than the quads and the glutes. So the glutes need the most, quads second, third will be the hamstrings. So we'll always try and prioritize what muscle our client wants. So if they say to me, hey, I really want a bigger pair of glutes, right, well, glutes are going to come first, and we're going to really try and up the volume in those more so than, say, the quads or the hamstrings. And of course, likewise for all the other movements. But you can get away with a lot less work from the hamstring, so you can make the hamstrings grow with a lot less effort. So you might only need 2 or 3 exercises for the hamstring, where you might need 4 or 5 for the glutes, purely because the amount of volume that you're going to need is going to need to be dispersed throughout the week. Else, what might happen is you train on a Monday, you do all 20 sets of glutes and you're fried. You can't walk, you end up waddling around like John Wayne all week, and quite frankly, you're in a bit of a state. Which means that by the time you come around to train them again, or even your hamstrings that week, it's just a nightmare for you. And so what we want to do is say, okay, well, we'll take those 20 sets and we'll just do, say, 6 here, 6 here, and we'll do 8 on a Friday, for example. So we're splitting them up by rest days, or even days of training upper body, to give you the maximum amount of effort. So you can, obviously, if you're better recovered, you can put more in, but also if you're really sore and really kind of disrupted still, the effort that you can put in is still going to be there. You shouldn't be, necessarily too much lower on the effort front, but your perceived rate of pain, because of course when you're doing RIR, you're working on how many reps you've got in reserve, that might bring your reps to like 4 or 5, where we actually should be at 2 or 3 or 1 or 2. So it's really important to consider those factors as well. I believe I've answered the question as best I can there. It's not the most in-depth question, but that's my considerations. They're the things that I would be thinking of. And of course, if you have any more questions on any of those, please do let me know. Guys, that is all for today. Welcome back. Thank you for everyone who has tuned back in again. Haven't taken a little break from the podcast lately. Just really to get a bit of a fresh start and to, collect my thoughts and stuff. We've been doing the podcast for nearly 2 years now, at least 18 months. So I think in that time I've only taken maybe 1 or 2 breaks out. So it'd be really good to be back with you guys. If there's anything you'd like to see, of course, either pop it in the comments or DM me directly, and I'd be happy to do my best to get those in for you. Until now, have a lovely weekend. Take good care of yourselves. Bye-bye.